Who is the most unsettling person you ever met? Friend of mine asked me to join his band because they needed another guitar player. I was kind of a hippie-ish kid, and my friend was really into hardcore metal. Nevertheless, he told me I should come rehearse with them, so I did. We roll up to this house that looks normal outside, but upon entering is completely dark due to the blackout curtains on every window. The feeling in the house is tense. The rest of the band is on the couch and I soon realize they're smoking M. Okay, not my scene, but let's do this. We go through some songs and I can tell the guy on drums is not happy with me. Halfway through a song, he stands up, kicks the crap out of his drum kit and screams at me to get the frick out of his house before he fricking kills me. I grabbed my gear and left. My friend later apologized to me, but he also told me that the guy who had the outburst had been arrested for beating his girlfriend to death. I'd strongly reconsider being friends with a guy whose friends are like that. There was this weird fat kid in my math class who slowly chewed and ate my plastic ruler. 10 years later I saw him in the news. He murdered and dismembered his wife and all her family, both her parents and a few siblings. Probably that. How the frick do these people land a wife and kids at all? I had a good friend who suffered from extreme mental illness. I would catch him having conversations with the drain in his sink and laughing at the replies. He would go through these cycles where he would become increasingly violent and unhinged, would disappear for a while, and come back calm and as normal as he could be. He ended up moving to Florida and last I heard, he was a suspect in a string of murders of gay men. Glad I knew him when he was still relatively harmless. As far as I know, he's still walking free somewhere. Pennywise is getting to your friend. I worked with a nurse who murdered a bunch of people in Canada. She was super awkward and hard to talk to, but I never pinned her as a serial killer. The most unsettling person I ever met was my doppelganger. Looked just like me. Same facial hair, same brand sunglasses, and even wearing a shirt from the same music festival. Although the years were different, it knocked me for a loop and I could tell it was freaking him out too. Probably the guy who kept misunderstanding when I said I wasn't into him and that frankly I wanted him to get his hands off my belt. He'd set himself up on some kind of meet locals thing after leaving for college for a year. I realized I had no friends when I came back home, so I tried to hang out with him. Didn't quite work out, but hey, I figured it was worth the effort. Invited him over to my place one day to watch and riff bad movies. He took it more as an invitation to try and get into my pants. I wasn't interested in more ways than one. He didn't seem to care. I had to threaten to call the security guard on him to get him to go. Later found out from a mutual acquaintance that he'd considered me hideous, but that he wanted to get in my pants because he collected V cards for a competition with other guys. Fricked up crap, guys. And I'm a dude. Whoa, that last line was a twist. A customer came in, who happened to be an old friend of my coworker. They were catching up while I stood by, and I overheard their conversation. This guy, the customer, told my coworker that he had joined the Marines. This was while the Iraq War was recent. My coworker joked I'd been killing folks. The customer then went on to say frick yeah he hadn't loved it. He then told the story of killing someone in self-defense before he joined the military, and that it gave him the biggest adrenaline rush of his life, and he signed up so he could relive that feeling. After he left, my coworker turned to me and said, well, he's certainly changed a lot. My grandma's neighbor. I've been helping take care of her health has declined over the years. The neighbor's 30-year-old son would come over and be aggressive and accuse us of sending voices to his head and making him insane. There is plenty of other things he came over and accused us of that were concerning, and each time he was more erratic and aggressive. We were really upset because we know he needs help and no one would listen and police couldn't prove he was unstable. We were very concerned and unsettled. He was just arrested for attempted murder this week. Not towards anyone in the neighborhood though. I spent a week in an adult psych ward. Long story, and boy were there some characters there. The most unsettling guy there was this giant overweight, hunchback schizophrenic. Apparently he'd been in and out of that ward for years. He'd shamble around, muttering to himself and occasionally explode into berating whoever was closest to him at that time. God have mercy on the poor soul who made eye contact with him. Strangely enough, he was also an artist prodigy. He'd whip up the most magnificent, bizarre sketches and put them up all over the ward, whiteboard murals and everything. My father-in-law lived in Renton and worked for a trucking company. One of the guys he worked with gave him very creepy vibes. Every day for a year he would walking into the same store purchase coffee before hitting the road, and this guy was always there. He always made a point to talk with my father-in-law, and after a time he said he wasn't creepy, just odd. A couple years later he saw the guy's picture on TV. Just so happened to be Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. The first time I met my friend's husband, my heart went cold when our eyes met. There was nothing there. It was like looking at a shark. About a year later, he picked up a girl at a bar, took her out to the countryside and killed her. My friend had their marriage annulled. She was pretty messed up for a while after that. That's terrible. Poor wife and poor girl. The wife was very lucky to get out alive. I hope she's okay now. I remember doing an inpatient psychiatry clinical placement in nursing school. The patients going through psychosis could say or do some unnerving things. For example, there was one patient who would spend the entire day drawing pictures of the monsters he saw, or another who accused her nurse of boiling her baby. Obviously, though, these sorts of cases did not make up the entirety of the unit, and I hope no one feels like I'm trying to perpetuate some kind of stereotype about psychiatry. However, there really are some cases where, if you're not used to that setting, you will get a bit unsettled, even though you know that the people you are working with are ill and need help and are still deserving of respect. That last paragraph says a lot about you as a human being and medical professional. I appreciate that you don't want to perpetuate a stereotype of the mentally ill, even though you have been unsettled by a few individuals before. I'm glad someone gives a crap about treating the mentally ill population like human beings. Was eating dinner with my wife in a hole-in-the-wall restaurant. This homeless woman that was asking for money sat in a chair next to me, spread her legs, in a dress W no panties, and kept whispering, "You wanna be my girlfriend" in Spanish. I lived on the streets for a little while in March of the year before last, and I sought shelter from the rain in a storm drain one night. Where I lived, this wasn't uncommon for the homeless. As I entered the storm drain for the first time, I saw a tall, skinny, dark figure approach me silently. All I could see was his silhouette. He asked who I was and what I was doing down there. I explained and he introduced himself as Roberto. That was all. Roberto was the man who taught me all I needed to know about life on the street. What people to talk to, where to get what, how to make money while keeping your dignity, etc. Well, he was a fairly unsettling individual. By far the sneakiest I've ever met. When walking in those storm drains or sewers, he seemed to just drift into the shadows and disappear. I should add that my sight in the dark is very good. You take your eyes off of him for one moment, and if he wanted to be, he was as good as gone. And in those sewers and storm drains, it was like he could reappear at any given moment. I owe the man my life, but goddamn, he was more mysterious and interesting than I'll ever be. Gotta know more about this. Sounds like a sick butt book idea. Dude had tried to set fire to his house with his family locked inside because Satan said he had to. He was nice and vaguely charismatic, but you could literally see the pants on fire crazy in his eyes. I didn't learn about his arson attempt until after he was gone. That guy just never sat right with me. That and the psycho lady that had decided to stop taking her lithium pills because God was calling her to be a prophet to Native Americans in China. That was my first interaction with reality. Hath fled from the crazy, so I was kind of freaked out. She has always been a very nice person to me though, and apparently the cops knew her and that she was pretty chill and non-violent. Finally, my stepbrother has some serious mental problems, FARS, autism, and sort of fell off the planet when my mom and stepdad divorced. He showed up to visit for a few weeks and was obviously not quite right in the brain space and displaying some hardcore withdrawal symptoms. He later got diagnosed with delusional schizophrenia, which explained so much about my childhood. I'll go first since I started the thing. I used to screw around at the mall a lot as a teen, and I met a lot of random weirdos. But the most specifically unsettling one was a grown man, like in his 30s or 40s, who followed me and my group around to different stores one night. We even split up when we noticed it to see who he wanted to follow. So smart. Split up the group of girls to make their smaller numbers easier to target. LOL at teen logic. and he followed me and a friend when we went off alone, went into a store, and browsed while trying to seem like I didn't notice him inching closer to us every few moments. And then he spoke to me. He asked me what kind of stockings are you buying. I replied, we're in the Disney store. That reply pushed his buttons. Instantly blew up at me, saying stuff like all you freaking know how to do is talk back. You'll never respect me. None of you will. You just love to hurt. I started to walk away, and he yelled, I just wanna see you cry, baby. Then we ran around looking for our friends, who were close by, begged to leave, and then promptly cried about how stupid the let's totally split up idea was. At least the guy didn't see. He would have got what he wanted, and we were 13 at the time, I think, so we didn't tell anyone because we thought we would get in trouble. I don't think any of us even told our parents for the same reason. I've met some pretty creepy people, but that one dude from 10 plus years ago is burned into my mind as one of the most unsettling, and he smelled like a hot attic. Back when I was a teenager, I was hanging out at a bus stop with two guy friends and talking to them. Suddenly this guy comes up in an absolute hysterical, manic state, screaming about not wanting to go back to jail or some crap. We were right across the street from a prison. The guy beelined for me. I'm a 5 feet 6 inches female, and my friends, both relatively tall guys, pushed him back and kept him from me. He wouldn't stop screaming about not wanting to go back to jail. I have no idea if he had somehow gotten out or what, but 16-year-old me was absolutely terrified. This girl in middle school, she carried a baby doll everywhere and wore her hair in pigtails, despite being like 6 foot tall and putting on a fair amount of weight by age 12. She had an Instagram account where she posted videos of her singing to this doll and feeding it, and it turns out she has a lot of them. Looks satanic. I saw her the other day. She was carrying the doll, dressed in new clothes, with an empty real pram, and she locked eyes with me across the bridge. I sort of smiled, but her facial expression didn't change. Freaking mentally legged it. In reality it was more of a quick scoot away. Definitely unsettling, particularly so when I was at school with her. A kid in one of my old karate classes. I say kid, but he was probably around 17-18. I was early 20s, taking lessons so my mother wouldn't have conniptions about my walking home at night from work. This kid was in for learning discipline or some dumbass thing. He'd have these moments where he'd just leave. His eyes would go flat and dull, and he'd get this crazed expression over his face and try out and out to kill you, while making weird anime fight noises and pausing to do dramatic poses. Like 1 minute, we'd be learning how to take knives away from people, and the next he'd be trying to stab you to death with a rubber practice knife. At some point, the instructor just gave up and was like, kick him in the groin the next time he does it. He got thrown across the room when he put me in a headlock and wouldn't let go when I tapped out. I did the foot stomp and duck thing. The instructor somehow grabbed his arm and just whipped him across the dojo. Freaking terrifying. I feel bad for his mom. His father was some sort of massive druggie and obviously the kid inherited some serious problems. I was doing training with children for pediatric emergencies. Paramedic. They wanted to teach us strategies for dealing with children. Teach us how to interact with them. Most of the kids were very normal and responded easily to our tactics. However, one little 5-year-old girl scared me more than practically any grown person has, even in all my time working the streets of Las Vegas. This little girl was a cute, normal-looking child with brown hair and slightly crooked eyes. She introduced herself as Frank and was convinced that she was not a little girl. She was in fact an old man. Everything she did was strange and absolutely not normal. She tore her food into little pieces and made strange grunts when she ate. She hit and pinched any child daring enough to interact with her and bared her teeth regularly when being spoken to. We gave her a coloring book and she found a black crayon and slowly colored the entire page with it. At first I thought that it might be a phase, but where do you even learn that at 5? Makes my skin crawl just thinking about her. I am sorry, but I am just picturing young Aubrey Plaza or Wednesday Addams messing with you. My friend's ex-girlfriend would get hysterical and would cut herself, threaten suicide in front of him. One time in front of me too. He got her Baker acted like 3 times. Eventually broke up with her and is in better place overall in his life now. One of my friend's brothers killed a cat and made his sister watch. He gave me a bad vibe before that, but after that I learned he was psychopath. I was in a group of kids and one day we had a visitor. She was the stereotypical mysterious woman with vividly colored piercing eyes. She asked to play a game where we would each think of a name and she would write it down on paper and then show us. She got it right for every person, even the obscure name I thought up. We never saw her again. What a crappy magician. She just showed up and read your mind and didn't even bother to disappear in a puff of smoke. There was this dude in my squadron back in my USMC days that gave off some pretty weird vibes. Single guy, lives in the barracks, never goes home on leave. If he took leave he stayed in his room and only left to go to get chow. He also never hung out with any of us, never went to the bar, squadron picnics, nothing. He barely ever spoke to any of us. Did great work and never got in trouble. Just a quiet loner. No big deal. I got sent to his room one day because he was late to work and discovered that he had nothing and that wasn't a shoot. No posters on the walls. No knickknacks on the shelves or any of the random bulls Marines collect. Just a couple of pairs of civvies and that was it. Creeped me the heck out. Like, dude, what do you do in here all the time? I found out a couple years later that if you could get the guy to have a few drinks, he was super chill and would talk your head off. Apparently harmless even if he was strange. All this makes me sad in a way. Probably just shy and socially awkward at first and waits for people to talk to him first to be friends. He probably felt so isolated. Definitely the doll lady from Japan. I worked at a hostel in Japan 2 summers ago. Saves money on traveling. Anyway, one day this woman comes inside carrying a large suitcase. We check her in business as usual. When she comes to the common area 10 minutes later she opens her suitcase and it is filled with dolls. They looked like old Raggedy Anns. Not porcelain. They looked sewn together. Dusty. Each with a different outfit. Anyways she had like 3 of these dolls. 1 boy, 2 girls. I think to myself whatever cool dolls. But then she starts talking to them. I couldn't speak Japanese but she was having a full-blown conversation with them. Like pausing to hear them speak and everything. I asked my Japanese co-worker what she's saying but she told me she was just rambling. Even in Japanese what she was saying was incoherent. On top of that she would bounce from emotion to emotion. Literally 1 second she would laugh super hard, as if the dolls said something funny, then would start crying, as if they made her sad, then right back to happy all in the span of a minute. Oh and she would yell randomly, like IDK how to describe it. Just after a pause sometimes she'd yell. Everyone was afraid to go into the common area with her around. Here's the thing though, I found this whole thing awesome, cause it's so surreal, and I actually went up and tried to talk to her. She waves for me to go away. I shake my head. Then in fractured English she yells go away. After an hour of this, the cops got called. I've met 2 people in my life that without a doubt have narcissistic personality disorder. They are not the most immediately dangerous people I have ever met, but they are like a virus. They will plague everyone who has the misfortune to know them. They will move through people's lives, manipulating narratives and gaslighting people, making their victims wonder why they frick that part of their lives was so dysfunctional, why their friends were so hard to get along with. These people are insidious and they don't even have an idea they are doing it to others, because it is a pathology and they think it's just a normal thing to do. There's a strawberry stand in the parking lot of the comic shop I go to. In that same strip mall, there's an auto repair shop at the end. I'm getting into my car from the comic shop when I see a very disheveled looking man stomping back and forth in front of the strawberry stand, yelling incomprehensibly. 2 burly dudes from the auto shop are standing 40 feet away or so, watching. I still don't know why I did it, but scrawny Buttermy gets in my car, drives to where the strawberry stand is, gets out of my car, and stands with the auto shop guys. We huddle, come up with a plan. I'll distract him by honking my horn while driving through the parking lot away from the stand, or 2 guys get the fruit stand workers out of the back of the stand and lock them in the auto shop. Fruit stand workers are already calling police, so we don't need to worry about that. But at this point the homeless guy had picked up an A-frame sign and was swinging it at the stand and its employees like a baseball bat. Hey, one of the auto shop guys yelled. Not the plan. Homeless guy smashes the sign against a pole, throws its remains into the street, and charges straight at me, of course. Auto shop guys book it to their business. I head for my car. I get in and lock the door. He immediately starts beating the heck out of my car. Finally, he punches the driver's side window right next to my head, gets his face right up to it, and starts snarling. The look in his eye was so unnerving. And then a cop pulls up. Before they are even out of their cars, the homeless guy puts his hands up, smiles, walks to the front of their car, and sits down on the curb. The next Wednesday, I decide to go talk to the strawberry stand to see what happened. According to the police, the homeless man had been asleep on the sidewalk opposite the stand a few minutes before he attacked. A cop patrolling the area cruised by, saw him, woke him up, and told him to keep moving. The police figure that after the cop left the scene, the homeless man must have assumed the strawberry stand had called the cops on him and attacked. My parents ran a street food stand and it was common for us to stay late until 9 p.m. Being in a not so affluent location, it was common to get a lot homeless people. On this night, my parents were distracted with a customer and my little brother and I were playing behind the stand on the sidewalk. I turn my back on my little brother for a second. When I turn around, a disheveled, disgruntled, clearly on drugs homeless guy was standing eye to eye with my little brother. I can still see his bloodshot eyes and protruding face veins. This was the only time I ever been petrified scared. I couldn't even manage to yell or run to get my parents. My little brother was too small to fully understand, but he was also petrified scared. After what felt for 10 minutes but was likely just 10 seconds, the man left like nothing happened. Scared to think what might have happened if the man decided to snap. I have also met some really uncomfortable homeless people, and the fact they are homeless has little to do with why they can be so creepy. I think that if you're on the streets long enough, you disconnect from societal expectations and, for a lack of better phrase, let their freak flags fly. I wonder what he was thinking when he stared at your brother. Ex-friend started dating this guy. The best way I could describe him was the kind of guy you see on the news who murders his family because God told him to. And I told this to my friend. He spoke in this way that was awkward and with an obvious forced friendliness. He told me that he could see people's sins as physical manifestations floating outside their bodies. He also at one point claimed to be possessed. He wouldn't let her go places without him. Sometimes he wouldn't say anything in social settings, just stare at people, and when you would catch him staring he wouldn't break eye contact. He gave every one of her friends at the time the creeps and made us all super uncomfortable. They eventually broke up, but only after she burned a ton of bridges during their relationship. I found out later he slept in his car outside her house for days after they broke up. Okay, I was in junior high, in 8th grade, and there was this super weird kid. He could be morbid and cracked dark jokes, but he was alright. I guess you could say we were school friends, but not really friends outside of school. We're in biology doing a lab together. The guy wasn't himself, and it was actually very unnerving. He kept making comments about how some people deserve to die, but I'm cool because I was his friend. I kept asking if he was okay, and the way he looked at me sent chills down my spine, but then it was like he switched back to his normal self. That's when I realized I never really knew him at all, and this kid was fricked up. Because of that weird moment, I had this feeling I needed to tell someone. So after class, I'm at my locker switching books. He was just chilling by his locker, just staring at people. When he wasn't looking in my direction, I ran to the principal's office and told them what he had said. They let him go to class but informed the teacher what was going on. The police were called quietly, and I'm sitting in the office like a goddamn blubbering girl who thinks she's just snitched on a friend for no reason and it's all for nothing. Yeah, I guess the night before he had snuck into the school and put pipe bombs and guns in his locker. He had planned to shoot up the cafeteria during lunchtime, which was in 40 minutes. Later we found out that he had killed his parents and little sister before coming to school. This happened in May of 1999. You are a hero. I bet 99/100 people wouldn't have said anything. Good on you. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.